Everyone, good evening everyone. Welcome to PUNDOLE'S and thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome to all our Instagram viewers as well. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Usha Balakrishnan, based in Mumbai, is a highly regarded independent scholar and historian specializing in Indian art and jewelry. With a PhD in ancient Indian culture and a postdoctoral degree in museum studies from the New York University, her expertise is unparalleled. Her seminal works include Dance of the Peacock, Jewelry Traditions of India, reflecting India's 5,000-year history of adornment, and Jewels of the Nizam, a government-commissioned documentation of the Nizam of Hyderabad's royal treasures. Her upcoming publication is Silver and Gold, Visions of Arcadia, the Amrapali collection of Indian jewelry, which will be forthcoming, in addition to several others already published. Usha's contributions extend to curating significant exhibitions and museum galleries like the Museum of Meenakari Heritage in Jaipur, Sringara Adornment at Mumbai's CSMVS Museum, Enduring Splendour at UCLA's Fowler Museum, and Meditations in Gold at the Flint Institute of Arts. She has also been instrumental in curating jewelry conferences and offering insights into India's vast and ancient jeweled heritage. I know she's helped us out several times as well. So we look forward to hearing from Usha about all our wonderful objects that we have on display this evening and what insight she can give us. Usha, please come.
Good evening, friends. Thank you, Malika, for that introduction. Thank you, Dadiba, Khurshid, Robin, all of you, for inviting me here this evening to share a little bit of my knowledge on a collection that is absolutely splendid. You know, as a jewelry historian, you don't often come across such a beautiful collection that has remained intact. And not only that, right here in India, in the city of Mumbai. So it's really been a great privilege and an honor to be able to study the collection and to share some insights with you this evening. So, the vast number of jewels and jeweled objects created for the Mughal emperors and the Maharajas of India, which are mentioned frequently in 17th and 18th century court chronicles and biographies, is not matched. I don't have it here. Is not matched by a comparable number of surviving pieces today. Over time, many of these treasures have been looted, plundered, or liquidated, stripped of the gemstones and melted down for cash. This loss was especially significant in post-1947 in India, when many royal assets were dispersed. So that's what makes the survival of the present set of objects so rare and so incredibly important. These pieces join a small group of jeweled royal items now scattered in public and private collections around the world. However, they are immutable testaments to the extraordinary wealth of India, the abundant availability of precious gems, the opulence and luxury of life in the royal courts, and most importantly, the mastery of India's anonymous craftsmen. So as I said, for a historian of jewelry, this is a rare and privileged opportunity. The beautiful catalog and Michael Spink's insightful essay delve deeply into the collection. This evening, therefore, I'll present the various dimensions that come into play when studying such a historically significant collection of royal treasures. The collection's narrative centers around two 19th century protagonists. Wajid Ali Shah on the left, the last king of Oudh, and Pusapati Vijayarama Gajapati Raj III of Vizianagaram on the right. He was the first Pusapati to be conferred with the title Maharaja by the British. However, These objects are also connected through three of the greatest manufacturing centers of the 18th and 19th centuries: Hyderabad, that is the Deccan, Lucknow, and Benares. However, the influences and materials within the collection extend far beyond, reaching as far as Europe and the New World. On the screen at the bottom is a triptych giving a panoramic view of Lucknow, showing a procession through the city by Ghazi-ud-Din Haidar, Nawab of Oudh from 1814 to 1819. Yeah?
Just make sure why it's not.
Oh, is it touching because of that? Yeah? Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, sorry for that. No, it's still coming. The echo is still coming. Anyway, he was Ghazi-ud-Din Haidar, Nawab of Oudh. He was the Nawab of Oudh from 1814 to 1819 and the first king of Oudh from 1819 to 1827. Ironically, the triptych was looted by a British officer during the siege of Lucknow in 1857. The kingdom of Oudh, with its capitals first in Faizabad and later in Lucknow, was situated in the heart of the Indo-Gangetic plain. It became a province of the Mughal Empire in the 16th century and was gradually expanded to include Benares, Allahabad, Jaunpur, Gorakhpur, and other important areas, all very important craft centers at the time. The kingdom rose to great power and prominence after the Mughal Empire's decline under rulers like Shuja-ud-Dawla and Asaf-ud-Dawla. Oudh emerged as a flourishing cultural center on par with other splendid kingdoms of the time: Hyderabad under the Nasir Jah Nizams, Mysore under Tipu Sultan, Punjab under Ranjit Singh. The kingdom of Oudh embodied what is popularly known as the Ganga-Yamuna Tehzeeb, a syncretic blend of Indo-Islamic cultures. The Nawabs of Oudh were patrons of art and architecture and transformed Lucknow into a city of grand monuments, gardens, and literary salons. Awestruck by the splendor and opulence of the Awadhi court, Reverend William Tennant, an English priest in India, in 1798 described what he saw as a blaze of wealth and magnificence. Sir Edwin Arnold, the English poet and journalist, described Oudh as the garden, the granary, and the queen province of India. The dawn of the 19th century saw cataclysmic changes across different parts of the subcontinent. Lord Dalhousie, the gentleman in the center, the Governor General, is infamous for the plunder of some of India's richest and fabulous treasuries, following the annexation of Punjab, Oudh, the kingdom of Satara, that is the Marathas, Tanjore, and Arcot. In 1849, Punjab was annexed. And you can see Dalhousie in that caricature with Ranjit Singh. Less than 5 years later, in 1856, Dalhousie turned his attention to the wealthy kingdom of Oudh. Under the pretext of misrule and invoking his doctrine of lapse, the British East India Company annexed Oudh. They exiled Wajid Ali Shah to Calcutta and systematically stripped the Lucknow Toshakhana of its treasures. Satara, Tanjore, and Arcot met with similar fates. The other leading character in this whole story is Vijayanagaram. The history and kingdom of Vijayanagaram is connected to ancient Kalinga, the region of the deadly war fought by Ashoka that resulted in such a colossal loss of life that deeply moved Ashoka converted to Buddhism. The region was subsequently ruled by various dynasties until Pusapati Vijayaram Raju, gentleman on the screen, established an independent kingdom in 1711. Now, the name Vijayanagaram comes from its founder Vijayaram Raju, however, interestingly spelt with a Z. to differentiate the Pusapati kingdom from the Vijayanagar of Hampi. The rulers of Vijayanagaram were zamindars, but power, land and the title Gajapati, meaning lord with an army of elephants, came from being loyal allies and supporters of the Mughals and then of the British and the French. The relationship, of course, soured later on. It was only Vijayaram Gajapati Raj III on the right side who was conferred the hereditary title of Maharaja by the British in 1864. In 1874, he was awarded the right to be called His Highness and conferred a personal 13-gun salute. The bottom of the screen is an aerial panoramic view of Vijayanagaram as it is today, with views of the fort that was established, that was built in 1711 when the kingdom was established. Having established the two parties central to this collection, let me now move to the stunning objects. The collection can be divided into three groups. The first group consists of items intended for secular use, forming royal court accoutrements, what is commonly known as a darbar set. This includes, and you'll see the objects on display around you, it includes this magnificent hookah, all its fittings, a circular base, a bell-shaped water reservoir, the top and bottom of the burner called chillam and sarpush, the cover, three mouthpieces known as monal, including a beautiful carved emerald piece that is in the case in the next room. This entire assemblage that you see on the screen is made of gold. It weighs more than 7,000 grams, that is 7 kilograms. Is set with flat table-cut diamonds against an emerald green enamel ground. The darbar set also includes a gulab pash, that is a rosewater sprinkler, a pandan, a betel nut box, two chowpra or masala dans, spice boxes, and three attar dans here, or perfume containers. Such items were integral to the social rituals of the court. All these objects are made of gold, set with table-cut diamonds on a green enamel ground, along with areas decorated in painted pink enamel, popularly known as gulabi meena. These items, apart from the hookah, together weigh more than 5,000 grams, that is another 5 kilos of gold. The second group of objects comprises items designed for use in rituals and pujas, a kiridam or a crown, and a pattam, a forehead ornament. There's also the shank, a conch-shaped case and stand. While the crown and forehead ornament are plain gold worked in repoussé and decorated with applied motifs, the conch shell is set with diamonds against a white, green and red ground, and enameled with translucent red poppy flowers and green leaves. The stand on which the conch stands is decorated with rubies and diamonds around the edge and beautiful green bass tail enamel. Now these four pieces together weigh about 1,600 grams. So we are just adding the gold weight count over here. And finally, as part of this Vijayanagaram collection, there is a third group, which includes two small containers listed as vinaigrettes and a khanjar or dagger, also integral to court attire. The pale green jade hilt of the dagger is inlaid with floral motifs set with rubies, emeralds and diamonds, while the two gold containers, one of the gold containers is set with table-cut diamonds, both are decorated with green enamel. Now the term darbar set or royal court accoutrements, as they are more mundanely known, traditionally encompasses even wider variety of vessels. It includes trays, wine flasks or surahis, boxers, ewers, bowls and so on. They were all important constituents of welcome and hospitality used for special occasions, for festivals and celebrations. Although each of these items was created for use, for actual use, the emphasis was on display and splendor. Dazzling works of art crafted from gold, encrusted with gemstones, and decorated with enamel served as powerful symbols in the meticulously orchestrated spectacle of imperial courts, a tradition that was established by the Mughal emperors and was emulated by every princely court in India. And in 1947, there were about 650 of them. This a folio from the Badshahnama depicts a darbar scene, perhaps an exhibition of Nowruz or Persian New Year gifts, or gifts for Dara Shikoh, who's also seen in the painting on the occasion of his marriage. The Emperor Shah Jahan is seated above, while trays of jewels, and you can see the detail on the right, gem-encrusted candlesticks, surhais, gold dishes, boxes, pandans, gulab pash and the like are all laid out on the carpet below. Interestingly though, there are no hookahs among the gifts. Tobacco smoking was actually banned by Jahangir in 1617, but the custom seems to have caught the fancy of people outside the court, since the inhalation of tobacco was associated with spiritual benefits. It is popularly believed that tobacco smoking was introduced into India by the Portuguese in the late 16th century, who in turn had encountered the custom in the New World in South America. The development of the hookah or water pipe, which blended water vapor with the tobacco smoke to soften the taste, actually happened in India. It is believed to have been invented by Abdul Fateh Gilani, a Persian physician of Akbar, and the earliest hookahs were fashioned in the Deccan. In fact, in the Aini Akbari, there is even a passage, Asad Beg, Akbar's emissary, was sent to the Deccan, and he brings back a beautiful gem set and enameled hookah as a gift for Akbar. Hookahs from the 16th to the 19th century display a wide variety of forms. They range from different shapes: rectangular, ovoid, globular, cone-shaped, mango-shaped, bell-shaped, etc. They were often small and portable, such as the examples on the top row of the slide, while the hookahs in the bottom row are much larger and were set on a mat or a base. They also came in a wide variety of designs, either plain or simple decorations made from materials such as glass, ceramic, brass, and silver. Some were elaborately decorated with beautiful bidri work, while others were magnificently bejeweled, as seen in the examples here in this sale. Paintings from the 17th and 18th century show that women used the hookah as much as men. The hookah became a symbol of royal repose and hospitality, and visitors were received by their hosts, often with a hookah close at hand. You can see a complete darbar set in this beautiful painting that dates to the early 19th century of a group of courtesans, beautiful courtesans. A bell-shaped hookah is placed prominently on a rug in front, while a portable jar-shaped hookah is held in the hand of the lady in green. There is also a pandan and attardans, spittoons, incense burners, and other vessels arranged in front on the floor. This painting by Francesco Rinaldi dates to 1789, features a beautiful lady reclining again with a hookah and a pandan by her side. If you look closely at the painting, the hookah is actually made of bidri, blackened brass inlaid with silver, a technique that originated in Bidar in Karnataka. It's very like the example that I have shown alongside from the late 18th century. And there are outstanding examples of bidri hookahs in collections around the world. There is no doubt of paintings depicting royals, nobles, and even ascetics smoking a hookah. Two paintings from the present sale are notable. On the left is a painting from 1749 of Raja Balwant Singh of Jasrota. It's on the wall over here on the right, attributed to that great artist Nainso. The Raja is seated with a hookah pipe in hand and a bell-shaped hookah on the carpet in front of him. On the right is a painting dated to circa 1840 of Raja Ranbir Chand of Kangra. Here he receives a guest with a hookah pipe in his hand. Hookahs were so popular in India, even the British and Europeans took to smoking the water pipe. The gentleman in the painting is believed to depict William Fullerton, a surgeon who was present in India, in Calcutta, during the siege of 1756, when Robert Clive was there. He is seated on a carpet smoking a hookah. Nearby are 2 rosewater sprinklers and a box, a pandan. As mentioned earlier, such court accoutrements signified royalty, thereby perhaps in some way conflating Fullerton with an Indian prince or nobleman. Hookahs were made in England for export to India as well, and by European firms in India, aimed at serving Europeans who lived here. The example on the left is a hybrid of Indian and Victorian taste. The base is made of bidri, while the stem, bowl and cover are made of silver with naturalistic flower motifs, floral motifs. The hookah was manufactured in Calcutta by Hamilton and Company in the 1860s. On the right is a silver gilt hookah, also made in Calcutta by the silversmiths Latte Brothers and Company. All these companies were here in India. Once again, the obviously hybrid style combines Indian and European design elements. While countless hookahs made of silver, glass, bidri and decorated with enamel survive, there are very few that approximate to the magnificence, splendor, beauty, lot of adjectives, and provenance of the present hookah set that is here in the next room. Both the hookah sets in the slide come from the collection of Robert Clive, widely known as Clive of India. The pieces at the top are made of silver, decorated with flowers inlaid with white sapphires and rubies against a vibrant blue and green enamel brown. The storied history of this particular set, from India to Powys Castle, Clive's home, then to the auction rooms, to the Victoria and Albert Museum, and finally to its current resting place in the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, makes for a fascinating story, though it is a tale for another time. I want you to notice the beautifully enameled underside of the hookah base shown on top. Based on its history, decorations, and the enamel color palette, this set is most likely to have been made in Murshidabad in Bengal or Lucknow in the 18th century. Below is another bejeweled hookah made of silver with floral sprays inlaid with rubies, emeralds and diamonds on a blue enamel ground, again from the Clive collection. Look at the underside of the hookah base. It is especially noteworthy. Decorated with green and blue enamel floral motifs, it is in a style characteristic of 18th century Lucknow work. Both these items were most likely taken from the Murshidabad treasury after the Battle of Plassey in 1757, when the last Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dawla, was defeated by the East India Company troops under our friend Robert Clive. Hold on. Back to our hookah set here this evening. The Vijayanagaram hookah set comprises the bell-shaped water container, a flared base, which is the burner, the cover and the mouthpieces. Now in contrast to the 2 Clive sets that we saw earlier, the present example is made of gold. Those were made of silver. Here set with table-cut diamonds in a design of floral medallions against a monochromatic green Champs-Élysées enamel ground. The medallions are particularly interesting because they resonate in the bidri. When you look at a lot of the bidri objects, the bidri hookah bases, the flowers are always in these oval medallions. Bands of red and white enamel in a chevron pattern outline the base and water reservoir. The 3 mouthpieces, the monal, which is in the case there, were most likely separately made. The larger mouthpiece is made of silver and set with white sapphires, that is safed pukhraj, and rubies, while the smaller one is made of gold set with diamonds. And the Colombian emerald mouthpiece is fashioned from a single emerald and beautifully carved with delicate overlapping leaves. Do take a close look at that. Another very important feature of the present hookah set is the flared base. The vast majority of hookahs, and we saw it in the paintings, were set on circular velvet mats decorated with silver gilt embroidery, such as the two examples on the screen from Lucknow and Banaras. Jewels, but the present one, our hookah base over here, is actually set on a beautiful gold base, also encrusted with diamonds. Now, importantly, jewels and jeweled objects from India appear on the market, have appeared on the market, almost always with no provenance, or oftentimes with fabricated stories about their journeys through time. Very rarely do we have the watertight provenance that this hookah set comes with. So what is that provenance? In 1849, after the annexation of Punjab, going back first to Punjab, an inventory of the Sikh Toshakhana was prepared, a task that took 3 months just because of the volume of objects. Vast number of treasures were seized by British soldiers, taken as trophies of war. Select pieces include the Kohinoor diamond, the Lahore diamonds, the Timur ruby, and other fabulous gems and jewels were appropriated and sent off to Queen Victoria. For the remaining treasures, no fewer than 8 auctions were held. In fact, the 7th and 8th auctions in 1850 and 1851 were spread over 6 and 9 days because there were thousands of items that were sold. Similarly, in 1856, following the annexation of Oudh, British forces looted the city and seized the Toshakhana. The loot went on even through 1857 after the mutiny. A prize agent was appointed to prepare an inventory and distribute the spoils among soldiers and officers. Select pieces were again sent off to England as gifts, while large portions of the loot was deposited in the East India Company's Toshakhana. They had several of these Toshakhanas. There was one in Simla, there was one in Delhi, there was one in Calcutta. These items that had been appropriated were auctioned in Calcutta in 1860 and again in 1889 after the death of Wajid Ali Shah, the last Nawab of Oudh, the last king of Oudh, in 1887. Look closely. The auction, this is the page from the auction catalogue. It was held on 27th August 1860 and the front page of the catalogue is titled Costly Lucknow Jewels. It was held on the premises of Hamilton and Company. More than 1,000 lots were offered in this sale. It lasted for 10 days. Of particular interest to us here is this, the lot 919. So you can imagine there were 918 lots that preceded it, listed as a hookah apparatus that included the hookah itself and all the other parts, studded with about 2,450 superior table diamonds. I'm not saying this, it's in the catalogue of 1860. At that time, they even weighed the piece. It had a gross weight of 623 tolas. And the catalogue described this piece as evidently made regardless of cost and is without exception the finest hookah apparatus in existence. The hookah was purchased by a wealthy Raja for the princely sum of 40,250 rupees. Who was the buyer? Vijayram Gajapati Raj III, the Maharaja of Vijayanagram. He had been given the title Maharaja by the British, and naturally as part of court splendor, court ceremonies, court celebrations, it was, I suppose, incumbent upon him to acquire these beautiful objects. In 1947, as part of the merger of princely states with the Union of India, all the Maharajas, and I said earlier, 650 of them, were required to submit inventories of their movable and immovable assets. An inventory of the jewels in the Vijayanagaram Toshakhana prepared for the last Pushapati Raja Vijayram Gajapati Raju, dated 1st July 1947, lists the hookah along with other items from the Darbar set, as well as the dagger, the conch and the stand. The only items missing from the inventory are the 2 small vinaigrettes. We know that the hookah set originated from the Oud treasury. The details are set out in the catalogue and corroborated in the inventory. The other items, all made in Benares, may also have once belonged to the Oud treasury and acquired from among the hundreds of items sold in the Oud auction. In the Hamilton and Company auction of 1889 that was held after Wajid Ali Shah died, it's titled again His Majesty, Items from His Majesty the late King of Oud. More than 1,300 lots were sold in a sale that was spread over 8 days. And I have that whole catalogue of that sale. It makes for fascinating reading. I've just put 1 page of that catalogue for you on the right side of the screen. Now, in the aftermath of Aurangzeb's death in 1707 and the collapse of the Mughal Empire, 3 provincial rulers rose to great power. These were the Nawabs of Bengal and Oudh, the Asaf and the Asaf Jah Nizams of Hyderabad. The plurality of the Deccan juxtaposed between the Mughal north and the Hindu south, together with the revival of royal patronage, drew craftsmen to Hyderabad, to Lucknow, Murshidabad and Benares. Thus, although the hookah is attributed to Delhi in the Vijayanagaram inventory, it was undoubtedly crafted in the Deccan, most likely in Hyderabad, an important center of enamel work in the 18th and 19th centuries. Or perhaps Hyderabadi enamelers employed in the Lucknow atelier. They moved around a lot. Comparative examples of other collections support the Hyderabad Deccani attribution. The items in this slide and the 4 slides that follow are all court accoutrements, all set with flat table-cut diamonds against a green enamel ground. They are all attributed to the same period as the hookah. So I'm just going to run through the slides. 2 models of parrots, fly whisk handles, again gold, green enamel ground set with table-cut diamonds. A pandan, a covered bowl and a jar. Again you see the same color palette. And a gulapash, an ankush or elephant gourd, and on the right side of the screen a pan box. Notice the reverse of the pan box, the leaf-shaped pan box, decorated with a dense floral design in green and blue Champlavé enamel. Typical, a color palette and the motifs are typical of Hyderabad and Lucknow in this period. Significantly, all these items in the 4 slides that I've shared with you have been not only attributed to Hyderabad and Deccan, but most of them have come with a provenance linked to the Nizam of Hyderabad. It is important to note that monochromatic green, blue, black and white are hallmarks of Hyderabad enameling. In this context, this slide presents the reverse of a group of jewels from the Nizam of Hyderabad's collection, all Champlavé enameled in these bold colors in the quintessential Deccani color palette. The attar dance, here in the case in front of you. Each of these perfume containers is in the form of a flowering plant within a vase with 6 individual blooms. The lid is surmounted 2 with parrots and 1 with a peacock. It's set on an octagonal tray, also profusely decorated with pink and white flowers. Just look at these pieces in detail. The meticulous sequence of craftsmanship and the sheer complexity of manufacture seen in these perfume containers is actually very astounding. Furthermore, in a tradition typical of Lucknow, the underside of the attar dance feature enameled floral motifs. Thus, we observe the Deccani style in the Champlavé green, the Benares craftsmanship in the painted pink Gulabi Meena, and the Lucknow touch in the delicate motifs on the reverse. On the screen is actually a photograph taken at a reception in honor of Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who who visited India in 1956. He went to Benares and he was received at Vijayanagaram Palace by Maharaj Kumar Vijayanand Gajapati Raj, seated on the far right in glasses. He was actually known as Sir Vizzy because he was knighted by King Edward VIII. He was the younger brother of the Maharaja. Look close at the table in front of the distinguished visitors, and to my eyes at least, two items resembling the present attardans are visible. So they were used for such ceremonial receptions and occasions. The next set of objects are the two chowpras or spice boxes. They are in the form of a 4-petal flower. The lids are set with diamonds, again on the green gown. But what's so beautiful is the side walls painted with pink flowers and birds nestling among the green foliage. Again, if you turn it over, the underside is decorated in the middle with a square motif. The painted pink and blue flowers are typical of the Lucknow aesthetic. Spice boxes such as these were popular. They held accompaniments for cardamom, clove, supari, etc. Two beautiful spice boxes, I'm showing you a comparative example, are worthy of mention to show the Deccan and Lucknow connection. The one on the left comprises a tray and 4 boxes. Look at the color palette, I'm not going to repeat it again, dated to the 18th century. The set is actually reputed to be a gift to Maharaja Ranjit Singh of Punjab from the Nizam of Hyderabad. The green ground and diamond encrusted floral sprays, again strikingly beautiful. The one on the right is of silver gilt, enameled in blue, green and red with a rich foliage of flowers and birds. Notice the enamel motif again that comes on the other side of this Lucknow piece. The Gulab Pash or rosewater sprinkler forms yet another component of the Darbar set. The slim and elegant sprinkler is actually made up of 2 parts, the bottom hollow drop-shaped body and a long tapering neck with a flower finial. Few words can describe the beauty of this piece. It combines diamond encrusted flowers, green enamel, and painted pink, white and blue enamel flowers and birds. There's no question it was probably made in Benares. Now the term Gulab Pash, on an aside, is derived from the Persian gulab, which combines gul or gol meaning rose and ab meaning water. The suffix pash means to sprinkle. In ancient Persia, roses were highly valued for their fragrance, and it is widely believed that the Persians were actually the first to distill rose petals and create rose water. In fact, the Sufi poet Rumi wrote, and I quote, "Rose is sent to earth by the gardeners of paradise for empowering the mind, the eye and the spirit." From Persia, the use of rose water spread to the Ottoman Empire and thereon to India during the Mughal era. However, ancient Indian texts such as the Charaka Samhita and Varaha Mihira's Brihata Samhita, 1st century and 6th century respectively, testify to the use of perfumes and fragrant water for sensory pleasure and well-being. In India, even today, sprinkling rose water is a symbolic act carrying deep cultural significance. Historically, of course, sprinklers have been fashioned from glass, ceramic, ivory and silver. However, precious objects such as this one were central to courtly life, and to my knowledge, very few of them survive today. Rosewater sprinklers are also very diminutive in size. The present example in the case at the back is just 11 inches tall. The compact size makes them easy to hold with one hand, allowing for the convenient sprinkling of sweet scented rose water. Look at this beautiful painting from the Deccan dated to the 18th century. It depicts a maiden on a palace terrace, and in her hand she is holding a rose water sprinkler, the bottle gently tilted, almost as though ready to welcome a guest. The last in the Darbar set group is the pandan and tray. Excuse me. Both items are decorated with a dense overall arrangement of flowers. Again, you see those cartouches set with flat table cut diamonds. Interestingly, the inner lid of the box is decorated with a scene of Krishna playing flute to the gopis. This plaque is actually typical of Jaipur work. It doesn't fit into the Lucknow, Hyderabad or Benares idiom. Perhaps it was made later, specially made and fitted into the lid. I put a little armband alongside from the National Museum in Delhi, which was made in Jaipur. It features a similar scene of a fluting Krishna. Notice the color palette, the plaque inside the box and the armband. The box sits on a matching tray, again similarly decorated. I don't need to go into the social and cultural practices associated with Pan. However, we know no meal was complete without Pan, no celebrations and ceremonies were conducted without the omnipresent Pandan, and no tete-a-tetes were even conducted without Pan. Apart from being a digestive and a mouth freshener, betel leaves are endowed with medicinal and health-giving properties. The combination of betel leaf, lime and spices was also believed to be very aphrodisiacal. As a result, the most splendid containers were made to hold the paraphernalia of a simple pan. The group of religious items. There is a crown, the kiridam, a forehead band known as the pattam, and the conch shell case, the shank and stand, are all exceptional. The crown was intended undoubtedly for a deity, perhaps for a family shrine. I know of no Maharaja who wore a crown of this kind. The dome-shaped ornaments worked in repoussé with applied repoussé panels and floral motifs. To me, it almost appears as though the gold itself is embroidered. Akin to the Zardozi embroidery I've shown you on the right. The jacket is from the Nizam of Hyderabad collection. The acanthus leaves and the stylized peacock feather, you can see that the crown is decorated with acanthus leaves on the top. And look at the two hookah bases on the right, both from Lucknow, both from the 19th century. Silver, decorated with floral motifs that actually resonate with the ornamentation on the crown. Interestingly, a common feature between the crown and the decorations on the hookah bases is that palmet or the acanthus leaf. This leaf is actually of European origin. You see it in the Corinthian capitals. It appears as an architectural ornament and decorative element throughout the Mughal period. Becoming, and then later on in the 18th century, it became a very important motif in Lucknow's floral imagery. This suggests that the crown may also have been crafted in Lucknow. Stylized acanth leaves can also be seen in these aktardans. The pattam is a headband, again crafted from gold with repoussé work. The motifs on this, it features two elephants flanking a floral throne, along with symbols such as a fish, the sun, a swastika. There's a row of divinities on top. And on the bottom is the coat of arms of the Vijayanagaram royal family, and you'll see that the motifs, the figures correspond between the pattam and the coat of arms. But importantly, gold and silver headbands like this were typically worn by reigning members of the royal family during special religious rituals, marriage ceremonies. Similar, to the umlak, and I put an umlak on the right side of the screen, a bridegroom's wedding gown, that is a wedding crown, that is very popular in parts of North India and Andhra Pradesh. Even today, an Andhra bridegroom is made to wear a pattam. Of course, it's not in gold anymore, it's usually of silver. Although these two items have been attributed to Western India, I believe the crown was likely crafted in Lucknow or Benares, while the pattam was probably made locally in Andhra Pradesh for the Vijayanagaram Maharaja. There were craftsmen working in all these ateliers. The conch shell and stand are exceptional and rare religious items used in rituals and ceremonies. Blowing the conch, as we all know, is a significant ritual symbolizing the start of a ceremony, and more importantly, the dispelling of evil thoughts before an auspicious event. The sound produced by the conch is sacred, is believed to actually represent the primordial sound Om, symbolizing creation. It is also one of the divine weapons of Lord Vishnu. The conch shell is designed in two hinged parts, so probably it served as a case for a conch shell and also maybe as a libation vessel, to pour water during puja. The piece features a ground of red, green and white Champlain enamel adorned with a dense pattern of red poppy flowers, all set with table-cut diamonds. The stand is beautiful, crafted in Deccan, and do see if they can take it out and show it to you. Look at the inside of the stand, remarkable for its bastille enamel in the well and the underside. At the bottom, just as an example, because I just love that piece, is a magnificent Shankha from Kerala. It's attributed to the 19th century with brass fittings, and it illustrates how simple ritual objects were elevated to works of sublime artistry. The Shankha is decorated with a striding yadi, the lion monster, a makara, the crocodile monster, and kirtimukhas, face of glory, as well as nagas, all arranged on top, along with images of Ganesh, Nandi the bull, and a Shivalingam. I think it suggests that it might have been used in tantric worship. During the Mughal period in India, jade held a special place among precious metals, valued both for its beauty and symbolic power. It was a symbol of everlasting life. Mughal emperors, especially Jahangir and Shah Jahan, admired jade for its durability, its smooth texture and spiritual significance, believing it to possess protective qualities. Blocks of nephrite jade were imported from Khotan in Afghanistan and skillfully carved by the Mughal craftsmen into elaborate dagger hills, cups, jewelry and other royal objects. Jade items were also seen as symbols of strength and refinement. Jewel daggers, such as the example in the sale, formed an integral part again of court attire. It was tucked into the sash and often gifted to loyal courtiers, officers, or presented as diplomatic gifts. The dagger, the khanjar in the collection, dates to the late 18th, early 19th century. The jade hilt is carved with floral motifs that are then inset with precious stones. Exceptional examples of jade daggers can be found in museums and collections around the world. And in fact, our own museum here, the CSMVS, has recently reinstalled its arms and armor gallery, showcasing some exceptional jade daggers, and I would invite you all to visit the museum to see it. The two small gold containers, also from the Deccan, were probably used as pomanders or perhaps even served as containers for tobacco or the like. Both are enameled with green. The butte-shaped one is set with diamonds. Open it and see it, because both containers have hinged lids that open to reveal an exquisitely pierced foliate grill inside. As I mentioned in my opening statement, these objects are connected through three prominent manufacturing centers of the 18th, 19th century. There are more than 3,000 diamonds in this collection. Scattered across the vast Deccan Plateau, in a region encompassing the ancient kingdom of Golconda, there were no less than 23 diamond mines. For more than 2,000 years, India was the only source of diamonds. India supplied the world with this precious gem. Ancient Indian texts, these are all flat, table-cut diamonds. Ancient Indian texts on gemology state that the diamond should be retained in its natural octahedral form. As a consequence, right through history from very early times, Indian lapidaries rarely reduced the weight of a stone by cutting or faceting. That only happened in Europe later. The aim here was to retain maximum weight with minimal loss and skillfully camouflage flaws by covering the whole surface with facets, and therefore we have the rose cut, or enhance the brilliance of mere slivers of diamonds by simply faceting them around the edges, as the thousands of diamonds in the present collection. They also inserted foil beneath the stones to enhance their brilliance. Look closely at the parrot in the Attribution. There's a tear-shaped briolet that hangs from the beak of the parrot. It's intricately faceted. Unlike traditional diamond cuts, the briolet is fully faceted in the round, allowing it to sparkle brilliantly when it catches the light. Ubiquitous in Indian jewelry, and I've shared all the diamonds, the traditional diamond cuts, as they were known in India in the past: Parab, Bilandi, Polki, Muklasi, Kanwal, and so on. The term Parab, which is of importance for us here today, means a section or portion. It refers to diamonds as flat tops and bottoms and irregular faceting around the sides. In the West, these stones are often referred to as lask, a term possibly derived from the Persian word lashk, meaning a bit or piece, which refers to a thin, flat diamond. There are a lot of people in the West who call these portrait diamonds. They are not actually portrait diamonds, they are just parabs. Notably, in the context of this collection, Lucknow and Benares were renowned centers for diamond cutting and polishing in the 17th and the 18th centuries. Even today, when you speak to jewelers in Benares, they take pride in the legacy of crafting flat diamonds, a skill that was once a hallmark of Benares craftsmanship. So we have a close-up of all the diamonds in the collection. How are they set? They're all Kundan set. And what does this mean? Kundan is a technique that is unique to Indian jewelry manufacture. In this method of setting gems, pure gold is beaten into thin, soft, and malleable ribbons. It's the ribbons that are known as Kundan. The term Jadal actually just means encrusted. It does not refer to Kundan. Kundan is the terminology for the ribbons. This ribbon, and we'll see it in the next slide, is cut into bits and then compressed in layers with an iron stylus to form a solid wedge around the gemstone. The gems, therefore, are held in place through pressure alone without the application of any heat. This was a very clever technique because it allowed the gem setter to camouflage irregularities in the gem. Look close and you'll see that no two gems, no two stones are identical in shape, size, and even cut. But it was the genius of the Indian craftsman who was able to assemble stones of different shapes and sizes, and with the help of Kundan setting, create magnificent pieces such as this. The sheer quantity of gems available to the goldsmith to match for color, quality, shape, and size for just the objects here in this collection is mind-boggling. It is evident that such an amount would only have been available in a royal treasury, where loose stones were accumulated to serve as ready cash and for portability. Each stage of manufacture of such items required the expertise of a master craftsman. In addition to the goldsmith or sonar, who was the first in the sequence who fabricated the metal form. You can see a metal form of a hook on the top left. And the Kundan Saz, who was the gem setter, was the last in this sequence. There was a Chitera, the design, who outlined the design onto the metal. He was followed by the Gharaiwala, or the engraver, who carved out the areas designated for enamel colors. He often hatched the base to create that light effect that we see in bass tail. It was then the task of the meenakar or the enameler who prepared and applied the enamel paste before firing it in a kiln. The term champlevé is actually a French word. It means raised field, to kind of define the technique of working. The Gulabi meenakar from Benares worked side by side with the champlevé meenakar. Now the Gulabi meenakar prepared a slightly raised white base first in the same champlevé technique, and then painted the delicate design with a squirrel hair brush. If you look closely at all the Gulabi Meena in this collection, you'll notice that as against the champlevé enamel, there's a certain concave character to it. The pink required a firing at a very, very low temperature. It was always fired last. Delicately shaded pink lotus and rose flowers, the term gulabi, therefore pink, touches of lilac and turquoise blue, and especially those little birds, doves and pigeons that you can see. You can actually see it here on the screen. I've circled the areas where you can see the doves in the works of art. The enameler had to be a true artist, skillfully delineating motifs to create perfectly shaded flowers and these delicate birds. No other group of court objects displays such a sensuous quality and such profuse gulabi meena decoration. I have not come across objects of this kind. On the right is a bracelet, and below that is a sarpej turban ornament, also probably from the same workshop as these gulabi meena items in the collection. If you look at them very closely, the way the flowers are painted and the manner in which the little birds are drawn, they seem to find a correspondence. Before I conclude, a few words on the art of enameling so predominant in these items. In India, enamel is called meena, the term perhaps derived from the Persian meena, meaning spiritual and heavenly, a metaphor for the recreation of the garden of paradise, filled with all kinds of beautiful flower blossoms, meandering vines, tiny birds, parrots and peacocks. The process of enameling is therefore called meenakari. Meena referring to the enamel, kari meaning manufacturing. Now in the 16th century, India encountered the art of enameling with its array of colors, elegant forms and precision of workmanship from Europe, coterminous with the arrival of the Portuguese and the conquest of Goa in 1510. However, it was neither a single one-time entry, nor was it from a single point of origin. From Spain and Portugal, from Germany and Netherlands, from Italy, Paris and London, the enamel road led from Europe to centers in Deccan and thereon to ateliers in North India. However, it was the Indian craftsman who learnt the technique and then married technique and color in his own inimitable style and interpreted the art form in distinctive idioms, giving Indian jewelry an identity that is even today unique in the world. For example, for the history and inspiration for the painted pink enamel in this collection, one's quest must start with Limoges in France, a very big enameling center of painted enamel, travel then to Paris, then come to Sindh, and then move to Lucknow and Benares, perhaps with a stopover in China. So too for the translucent green, which came, from Siena and Germany through perhaps the northern land route or the southern sea route. The poetic beauty of these utilitarian objects stemmed from the manifold rites, festivals, ceremonies, and pastimes that filled the lives of yore. I was talking to Lekhaji, what has happened to those days? We were wondering when such beautiful objects were part of everyday life. Magnificent ewers and lotas just to wash hands, hookahs or water pipes just to smoke tobacco, pandans to house the mundane betel leaf, lime paste, delicate attardans to suffuce the air with fragrance, and gulab pash to sprinkle rose water in welcome, were all crafted for use but designed for splendor by anonymous Indian craftsmen. Thank you.
We may have time for a couple of questions, or we can move on to the next talk. You could always meet Usha after this and discuss anything. Any questions? Thank you, Usha, for a hugely informative talk.
Thank you.
I'm going to spend the next week looking at these things, re-looking at them, and also putting in context the history to this collection and the family that collected them.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Usha.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
May I please ask two of my colleagues now, Sarang, Sharma and Robin Dean, to join us on? Who are going to take us through a little talk on new ways to attribute paintings from the royal courts. Could we all take our seats, please? Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Is that working? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello. I should point out at this moment that when the title says scholarly practices, that's Sarang's, the scholar, not me. So I'm just the interrogator. So it's going to be brief questions from me and a little bit of prodding to make sure that he stays on course while Sarang explains some of the research. Can you hear? I don't think this is working. Hello? Can hear now? So yes, it'll be Sarang providing most of the talking and me just some gentle prodding. But at the outset, I'd just like to start by saying what a great honor it has been to have the opportunity to handle and research the Leela Sita collection. It is a family collection that has been built up with great love and care over 3 generations. I think it's remarkable that today we have jeweled objects that were offered at auction in India in 1860, and we have paintings that were collected and kept in the same family from as early as 1926. So it's remarkable when people say that Indian art community has only started in the last few years, that it's been alive and well for 150 years of connoisseurship. And probably longer when you look at the Mughal courts. So yes, it's a great pleasure to have handled the collection and to have had the opportunity to research it. But I have to also admit that I only first saw the paintings in the flesh at the end of August. So it has been quite a whirlwind to produce a catalogue in such a short period of time. So I just wanted to thank the numerous people who've been involved in the production. Firstly, thank you to those of you who introduced us to the collection. You know who you are, and thank you. And a multitude of other people along the way for getting this catalogue to press and for getting the exhibition hung, including Sarang, of course, here, who was given very short notice to be on stage here and also to do the research and translating for the catalogue. To Noza, our catalogue designer, who had numerous late nights and sleepless nights. To Khurshid and Jahangir for their work on the catalogue. All the girls in the office who I give hell to on a daily basis. And also to Malika, Priya and Sonali for putting up with my madness when I'm trying to do some research. And last but not least, Dadiba and Khurshid. Dadiba for running down to collect the paintings in person, and Khurshid for keeping everything afloat in the office in my absence. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of painting attributions, I first wanted to introduce Sarang, who has been assisting us actually for several years now, initially with translations and increasingly so with research and scholarly notes, and the introduction to the essay in here, which I would encourage you to read, is also by him. So I thought, Sarang, it would be useful if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family connection to Indian miniature painting.
Thank you very much, Rob. I belong to a tradition of hillmen who are neck deep in Persian and Himalayan art. My grandfather, he was a poet who wrote in Farsi, and my father traded his quill for a brush and became a painter instead. My father learned painting from Chandulal Rana, a descendant of the illustrious Nansukh of Guler, and established his own atelier at Chamba. So my uncles learned under my father's tutelage. And I also emerged as a painter in the early years of my life, but later I realized it's better to be a bad researcher than to be a worse painter. And I've been studying Pahari miniature painting and Mughal painting for around a decade now, working for PUNDOLE'S and some museums in the West. I've been a regular collaborator with Dr. Harsha Dehejia. We have been working on books and research papers as well. I recently catalogued the Pahari collection of the Cleveland Museum of Art at Ohio. The catalog book is just around the corner to be released. So that's a brief introduction. Thank you so much.
So it makes the rest of us look a bit pathetic. I haven't done anything in 10 years. So the important feature when I first started looking at Indian Pahari paintings was that you basically had to pick up Archer's book on Pahari paintings, and it was the sort of student Bible for anyone who was starting their research. And he essentially looks at regional courts and tries to identify different styles. But there is a sort of almost chronology of art history amongst Indian miniature painting scholars. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about even earlier than that, because in the case of this collection, you have examples of N.C. Mehta talking about paintings from the collection, Archer talking about paintings from the collection, Goswami talking about paintings from the collection, and you get quite different approaches over that period of time. So can you elaborate a bit?
So by the time N.C. Mehta comes into the scene, scholarship regarding Indian painting is more aesthetic oriented. If we study the work of Kumaraswamy, he was more of an aesthete than an art historian, a philosopher rather. And he was more concerned with the philosophical or symbolic aspect of those paintings. So it did not matter to him much whether a painting was from Basoli or from Nurpur or Kulu. He would prize a painting only on the basis of its aesthetic qualities. But by the time we reach the mid-20th century, and scholars such as N.C. Mehta, Karl Khandalawala, M.S. Randhawa, they start coming into play, they very well carry forward the ethos of the Indian nationalist movement. And a binary between Islamic art and Rajput art was constructed. So Islamic art would be anything that was Mughal, and Rajput art was the art movement in retaliation to it. So as a result of it, there was a very convenient theory that was put forth that only when Aurangzeb started persecuting painters in the Mughal court, they started moving northwards, and the foundations for Pahari miniature paintings were laid. And Archer, at that point of time, starts distributing these paintings into various schools on the basis of their stylistic qualities, stylistic differences. And Goswami, on the other hand, he has a more individualistic approach, where a painter matters more than a school. So he admires a painting for the painter who has made that painting rather than for the school itself. So it does not matter to him whether a painting is made at Basoli or Guler or Kangra, whatever stylistic affiliations those paintings would have, but a painter is the one who holds the paramount significance. So this work of identifying an anonymous painter who was singing in a chorus has certainly enriched our understanding of Pahari miniature painting.
Thank you, thank you. And so, if you wander around the exhibition, you'll see that increasingly we've started to follow the maybe the Goswami terminology, that certain works in the collection are identified as ascribed to a master artist at the court of X or Y. But even then, if we look at the history of attributions for a similar painting, if we start at the work that's currently ascribed to the early Mandi master, 40 years ago it would have probably been described as a Bikaner painting. So how is it that, or what has happened to allow us to make that step forward in assessment and to allow not only this painting but a whole body of work to change from Bikaner to Mandi, which seems quite a remarkable leap of either faith or scholarship?
Can we see that painting, please? So this painting right here, as Rob put it very well, that 40 years from now, this painting would have been termed as a Bikaner painting. And that is because of the bias that I was talking about, because of that nationalistic movement that was making incursions into art history, given the very fine and sophisticated Mughal sensibilities that we get to see from a visual perspective in this painting, would have led one to believe that there was a Mughal master. Bikaner is a school that is usually attributed such paintings to because of its close affinity to the Mughal court during the reign of Jahangir. And that must have been the reason that the Rajas of Bikaner, they were very well in the good books of the Mughal emperors, so there's a possibility of 1 or 2 painters migrating from the Mughal court to Bikaner. And it does not at all fit the binary of Rajput and Mughal miniature painting in terms, with respect to Pahari painting. But it was the work of Kathy Glynn Benkheim that she was able to identify this painting and a lot of other such paintings, similar looking paintings, to Mandi, purely on the basis of the portraits that she discovered from the region. So here is one example, formerly from her own collection, now in the Cleveland Museum of Art. It shows Raja Hari Sen of Mandi, done purely in that visual language that the previous painting is rendered in. And this is inscribed on the verso in Takri, identifying this Raja as Raja Hari Sen of Mandi, and this was an important giveaway. So we had these wonderful, fantastic looking Mughal miniature paintings with Takri inscriptions on the back. And nobody knew where these came from, and most importantly, this discovery challenged the preconceived notion that Pahari miniature painting starts only in the late 17th century after the painters started facing Aurangzeb's prosecution.
So this really sort of pushes back the boundaries
Absolutely.
of the hill ateliers.
Absolutely. So Pahari paintings were much older than we traditionally believed them to be, and these paintings are very important from this perspective.
And how is it? I mean, if we're to sort of push the attribution, okay, you have this ruler that is from Mandi, so that's a good starting point. But what else can be used to pin it down to a Mandi atelier rather than just a Mughal artist who's turned up at a court and painted a few pictures?
I would say the longevity of this painter's stay at Mandi. So it is not only for 5 or 10 years that this painter is continuously painting at the center, but we keep on getting paintings rendered in this visual language till the reign of Raja Suraj Sen, a descendant of Raja Hari Sen, his son and successor. There are a few paintings in the Chandigarh Museum collection that are rendered in this visual sensibility. And the subject matter, most importantly. So if you look at this painting on display, it resonates the workmanship that we get to see in the paintings of Padishah Nama to a wonderful degree. This suggests to us that it was not a novice painter who, in search for greener pastures, started traveling northwards, but must have been a master who migrated to the Mandi court and started making all these fantastic paintings. So we can compare this painting to any Padishah Nama folio, and from a compositional point of view, this is exactly what we get to see. The only difference being, instead of depicting Babur, Humayun, Akbar in succession, we get to see Devi, Krishna and Vishnu sitting underneath golden canopies. So in spirit, these paintings remain Mughal, but from a subject matter point of view, these paintings are definitely Pahari.
And here's another example. Yeah,
another fantastic example. And it's very important. This painting is particularly close to my heart, given the level of detail that the painter has put into. So it's a wedding scene, the wedding of Devaki and Vasudev from the Bhagavata Purana. And in this wedding procession, there's a lot of Pahari elements to it, especially the trumpeteers that can be seen on the minaret, the Nagara beaters. And interestingly, in the Zanana quarters, the inner quarters that are depicted in the painting, there is a woman breastfeeding her infant child. This detail has nothing to do with the subject matter, never finds any mention in Bhagavata Purana or Harivanshi Purana, purely out of the artist's own fancy, must have attended some wedding in the hills, must have seen such a thing and got it recorded in this folio. A very Mughal thing to do, I would say.
Okay, that's great. So if we take this on, we then have obviously a very famous series, the Gita Govind series, which was first rediscovered by N.C. Mehta himself in the 1920s, and it was rediscovered in Terry Garwal. So by Archer's logic, in theory, it should have been called a Garwal painting. But generally speaking, now everyone, well, not everyone, lots of people say Kangra and some say Gule Kangra. So what do we know about stylistic elements of this painting that pull us into referring to it in this manner? And why is it that we don't really talk about a Garhwal school?
Well, to begin with, we don't find a lot of evidence of there ever existing a painting school at Garhwal. Given the genealogical studies at Hindu pilgrimage sites, we don't find mentions of names of painters who must have been working at Garhwal. There's a possibility that there must have been a band of painters who migrated towards Garhwal by the beginning of the 19th century when the Kangra court was displaced.
And so when you're talking about the pilgrimage genealogies, is really what Goswami was sort of the master at in terms of working out where these artists were moving to and from through the records of the pilgrimage sites. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we don't find, as I was mentioning, any traces of painters working at Garhwal, but this painting set in particular, it is purely the work of a Gulair painter, most probably a successor of Nansuk. And there are reasons to believe so, because there has been a preliminary study that has come to light. So here's some sketches that were rendered by the great master Nansuk himself, as identified by Professor B.N. Goswami. And he must have not found the time to either complete this set, or he must have been of failing health at the last stage of his life. And these are the studies that he came up with, which were later picked up by his successor, who made elaborate sketches based on these drawings.
So these are the first drawings are known to be by Nansuk, and then the more detailed full format drawings are by one of his followers.
One of his followers.
But
either his biological successors or just another painter who was working at his court, at his atelier. But these paintings, they have nothing to do with Terry Garhwal, that is for sure, and is certainly the work of a Gulair master, and that is why I find it logical to have these paintings attributed to Gulair, such as the Nala Damayanti paintings that are in the Jammu collection but were made by Gulair painters, so we call them Gulair, and the Usha Aniruddha paintings that were made at Chamba, but we attribute them to Gulair as well.
Okay. And Archer tends to associate this with a marriage of the Kangra royal family in 1781. And that is pure supposition on his part, which then sort of has fixed the date for everyone as 1780. But is that logical? Or if Nansuk is working presumably on the preparatory sketches that much earlier, should we actually just admit that the whole project happened over a shorter period of time, and that maybe he worked on the sketches towards the end of his life, and therefore these are potentially painted 10 years earlier?
I certainly believe these paintings to be made at least a decade earlier than presumed to be. Even if Archer claims that the paintings were given as marriage gifts to some Terry Garhwal princess, so these paintings were certainly made prior to that marriage taking place, not for the very occasion that this would be given as gift. And definitely, from a stylistic point of view, if we could go back to one of these folios.
Oh, sorry.
So, a very important reason why many art historians tend to label Kangra paintings to be belonging to 1780s and onwards, because of the reign of Raja Sansar Chand. And he is certainly a landmark figure in providing patronage to painters at Kangra. And a very important hallmark to be kept in mind whether to term a painting as Gulair or Kangra is to look at the facial types. So if the face appears to be round, that's a Gulair painting. If the face is squarish, that is a Kangra painting. So this transition from naturalism towards idealization is very important, and this painting set is, I would say, the missing link that joins these two sensibilities together. So certainly predating the reign of Raja Sansar Chand, I would say a decade is a very comfortable wiggle room for such sensibilities.
I think Malika, we have a sale room notice now. We should probably say the paintings are 10 years earlier than I think I dated them in the catalogue. But I think that if anything, that puts it closer to Nansuk and more closely associated directly with the artist. Or do you think that the sensibility here is that next generation who sort of step away from his his oversight and work in a different manner.
So I would say, in spirit, these paintings are certainly the works of Nansuk, but in terms of technical abilities, these are definitely the works of Nansuk's successors. Had this been a Nansuk painting, there would have been no background, just a backdrop, and Krishna and Radha just floating in space, given the minimalist drive that he was undertaking.
So then that leads us neatly on to the question of the other important painting in our collection here, which is the portrait of Raja Balwant Singh with attendants. It's listening to musicians at night. The painting on the left-hand side of the screen obviously is the one in our auction. And the work on the right-hand side is another painting of Balwant Singh, again listening to musicians. And in the case of the painting on the right, there's an inscription at the top that identifies Nansuk as the artist who is responsible for the work. And that, for Archer certainly, is enough to say, therefore, the painting on the left-hand side is by Nansuk. But if we speak to almost any scholar, they have different opinions. So we get a problem in the painting on the left-hand side in terms of its inscription, because it mentions, or it appears to mention, the name of another artist, possibly a Bhajan Sahe. And Karl Kandalwala says, to us the name Sahe appears very significant, because we are of the opinion that Pandit Sew, the father of Manuk and Nansuk, was really one Pandit Sahai, whose name was corrupted when his ancestors settled in Guler into the hill version Sew. Vajan is the same as Bhajan, and we have been set to thinking whether Pandit Sew's full name was Bhajan Sahe. To me, that's quite a bit of scholarly acrobatics there. I mean, you've changed every letter in both names to suit something that may or may not be relevant, just to say that it was possibly the father, not the son, painting the work. And Goswami confuses the whole thing further by saying, well, the inscription in our painting on the left-hand side seems to be written in Nansuk's hand. But then he goes on to say, but I don't believe that the painting is by Nansuk. So we have three scholars all giving slightly different opinions. So my question to you again is, what do you think you can say about these three opinions? And also, to a certain extent, does it matter?
These are all a bit of a stretch, aren't they? So as you rightly mentioned, just art historical gymnastics is what they are all up to. I certainly believe that the inscription mentions the name Vajan Sahai or Vajan Sahe or Bhanjan Sahe, however you may want to put it. Some people have read it as Sahe or Sahai would mean help, that Bhanjan helped with the composition, or Bhanjan must have been a second person who was participating in getting this painting executed. If you ask for my opinion, Nansuk's fingerprints are all over this composition. So these two, their resemblance is so uncanny that there is no way you can't say that these two are the work of one person, or the compositions are the work of the same person. But what Nansuk lacks in terms of technical skills, Nansuk would never show the drapes on the clothes, the wrinkles on a blouse, and that is what this painter is up to. So if you ask me, this painter's work is more linear, while Nansuk's workmanship is more painterly. So his affinity for detail in this painting is something that we lack in Nansuk's paintings. He's a master composer, there is no doubt about it. But from a technical point of view, he was just not as skillful. Physiognomies are all over the place. He does not address perspective much. Whereas this painter, he works in a Baroque manner. So if we look at the embroidery in the carpet, we shall never see a Nansuk painting having such intricate detail. I would say this painting is the best of both worlds. So it's composed by Nansuk, of course, but then painted by a painter who was far more technically superior than Nansuk himself. And this also brings to mind the Mughal method of how a painting is produced. There's a different person who composes the painting. We call them Taraha in Farsi. And then there's a person, the Amal, who executes that painting. So I would say that Nansuk was the Taraha, or the master in this composition, and the executor was somebody else, perhaps this Bhanjan gentleman or Bhajan gentleman, however you put it. But it has nothing to do with Seu.
And does it matter that in the inscription it says Liki rather than painted? Because that seems to be saying written rather than drawn. Or is that only a European sort of reading of the distinction?
Yeah, I would say this is tradition. So in every Pahari painting that has been signed, they always mention the painter's name as Likhi. Nansuk has himself written so many paintings, if I may use the word. And because paintings were supposed to be read.
So that's a red herring. That's still very much
right.
Points to an artist rather than a scribe.
Of course not.
Yeah,
of course not.
Yeah.
So Bhajan Sahaya was definitely not a clerk, a scribe. He was certainly a painter, whoever he was, whether he was Bhanjan or Bhajan Sahaya. He's definitely not Seu and certainly not Nansuk. But then again, as you mentioned, what's in the name? So a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. Yeah. And this painting is just as lovely, whether it's made by Nansuk or not.
Okay. So then we come to your particular crusade. I think the next one is quite a big statement. You've gone against Goswami, which is kind of fighting talk. Of course, he's not here to fight with you anymore, but this body of work, which is stylistically immediately recognizable. You have these Bhagavata Purana pages, and in this case a Dasavatar series with this amazing group of wacky demons, and they expand beyond the edges of the pages, especially in these vertical paintings. Everyone, pretty much, says these are Mankot. But increasingly, in the very recent past, people are starting to say the master artist at the court of Mankot was formerly the master artist at the court of Mankot, and he's actually from Chamba. Why is this sort of scholarship starting to take place now?
Well, I'm guilty as charged, as you mentioned, for creating such a bane of my existence. So it's actually my humdrum that I completely refute to believe that these paintings are the work of a painter at Mankot. And I truly believe that these paintings were made at Chamba.
And these are two portraits of Chamba rulers,
right.
Which you say are part of the reason why you can identify a regional stylistic atelier appearing in Chamba, not at Mankot at this period.
Yeah.
And that therefore the whole body of work is more likely to have been created by a Chamba artist. Is that the?
Of course, yes. That's exactly what I'm saying.
And if we go to the work on the right-hand side here, I believe is at the Philadelphia Museum. If you go onto their website today, I'm pretty certain that it'll still say Mankot.
Yep.
So what is it that suggests that their artists were actually at Chamba, not Mankot? I mean, because, for instance, in this sale we have a portrait of a ruler of Kangra, but it's by a Mandi artist. So we know that artists are allowed to paint rulers from other parts of the world and other courts. So what additional evidence helps you to sort of move this whole body of work across to Chamba?
So the first point I would say is the evidence, this pictorial evidence that we have of this painter staying at Chamba for at least 3 generations. So here we are seeing a grandfather-grandson duo, the portraits that are seeing, and both of them, they are rendered in one hand. That suggests that this sensibility strived at Chamba for at least 2 generations. That is one point that comes to mind. And the second is the Takri inscriptions that we get to see on these paintings. If you could show an example. So not only the painting style, but the manner in which the Thakri inscriptions are rendered on top of these red borders in white ink, the handwriting, it suggests that the scribe was also very well present at Chamba. So it's not the possibility that the scribe and the painter, they went hand in hand to Mankot, painted a few paintings and then came back.
Okay, so it's a combination of this type of evidence, and then later on in Chamba you also get works that are Kangra in style. So how do you? Is that again a group of itinerant artists coming from Kangra and painting in that style, or do you think that there's just a changing vocabulary within this atelier of Chamba artists?
I think there are 2 points that come to mind. First, the Chamba painters, they were responding to the zeitgeist, the spirit of that age. As Kangra style by the early 19th century has taken over the hills in a storm. And every painter, he was working in Kangra style, be it at Mandi or Chamba or even Basoli. There were Kangra painters working for the Basoli chief as well, Mahendrapal. So this is something that was in vogue, and the painters were just responding to it. And secondly, descendants of Nansuk, they were already patronized at Chamba a generation earlier. So whatever stylistic affinities they brought along with themselves were picked up by local vernacular painters as well.
And do we have evidence of say, I don't know, a sketchbook of one artist working with, producing a Kangra-style painting and then a Mandi-style painting and something else, almost as a template for his patrons? Or is there anything like that you know of?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge. No. So again, we're still saying Kangra-style in Mankot.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think as you've all had 2 talks, you've been very patient. And then this is just an oddity that I wanted to bring up because someone told me that I'd got my cataloguing wrong because they said you've named the ruler in this painting, but it's actually got an inscription at the top that says it's Maharaja Sid Sen of Mandi. And so I just wanted you to explain why we rejected the theory that it was Raja Sid Sen and in fact a Kangra ruler of a later date.
There are 2 reasons. First of all, there is another inscription on this painting that is in Mandali Thakri. And Thakri is the vernacular script of the hills. And this inscription is in Devanagari, a script relatively alien to the land. So from a dating point of view, that Thakri inscription is much older than this one. And I would give the benefit of doubt to the Thakri inscription, identifying this gentleman correctly. And whoever wrote the Thakri inscription on this was... And
I also believe that Sid Sen was some huge ruler, a giant man who
flew every morning to Kashi.
Yeah, and he could crush coconuts in the palm of his hand.
Spoke the language of birds.
So he doesn't look quite like this gentleman either.
Of course not. He's rather petty. Yeah.
So we don't need a sales room notice on that one. We're safe. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I think we've got to the end of our chit chat. Yeah. You can. Oh, there's one at the back. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello. Hi, my name is Dhwani. Hi, that was a great talk. I have a question. Could you speak about the Mandi school and the early masters at the Mandi school? There is the Devi painting which is at the Met. Regarding that, and the earlier one, the master painting, that what's the relation and the timeline difference between those 2 masters?
It's a very important question. And to address this, I think I must bring to mind the origin of Mandi painting. So as Kathy has said, that she could not find a direct relation between Mughal painting and Mandi painting because Mandi came under direct Mughal authority much later. And there is no political way possible for a Mughal painter to migrate to Mandi just out of thin air. So what she has suggested is that when Jahangir visits Nurpur in 1620-1621, he must have brought along a band of painters along with himself, and during one of his very famous hunting expeditions, one of those painters must have joined him, and then he iterated a little bit towards the east and ended up at Mandi. And then he was extended patronage by Raja Hari Sen, and he led to this production of fabulous painting sets for the late king. And 2 or 3 generations later, we see a completely different visual language which is at play at Mandi. Rob, if you could kindly go back to the Bhagavata Purana paintings. This is a better example. This is a better example. So if we study those early Mandi paintings made in Mughal style, you shall certainly see reminiscences of this blue stripe and white stripe for the horizon, this green backdrop in the back. At this point, these painters, they have completely let go of their connections in the plains. And it is not feasible for them to fetch pigments anymore from Lahore or wherever other close centers of painting activity were. So they try to replace those pigments with whatever is available regionally. So they can't apply lapis lazuli anymore, so they shall be producing blue with whatever mineral is available in Mandi. They can't apply malachite anymore, it's a very expensive pigment and there is nobody to procure it for them. So they replace it with some local vegetable color, as it is seen in this painting. And with the passage of time, the face types also start distorting as well. They try to stay as faithful to their Mughal predecessors by using very fine stippling for the faces, but they're just not as gifted. So it ends up being those bold brush strokes that we get to see on those very unpopular bold brush strokes that we get to see on Mandi paintings. The hairline starts receding because they want to apply very fine stippling to suggest hair, but they just can't do it any well. And even the band, the group of birds flying at the horizon, it's also a Mughal hallmark that they're still making it sustain till the mid-18th century. So it's just, everything is coming from Shah Jahan period Mughal painting and finding its way in a very regionally vernacular language.
2 separate masters.
We do get these 2 separate masters, of course.
So I think what you're referring to is that the early Mandi master that we talked about with the very Mughalized group of paintings is say 1630 to 1660 according to Catherine Glynn, and then we get this later artist that, well, that's possibly even later than that, maybe 1690 to 1720, that sort of period. But you get these really wacky paintings. So there are some really great, powerful scenes of Sid Sen visiting deities. You get Sid Sen in conversation with other rulers, and you get these very sort of deeply intense works with dark pigments, and which probably is to do with the change in access to different types of pigment. And also you get this much more localized sense of deities and people, and even though he's the later master, I often prefer them as paintings. I think that, you know, that painting that was exhibited in the Met recently, where Sid Sen is meeting Savari Dogar, it's a really powerful painting. It's got a lot of oomph in a very small painting. So I think, you know, this example from the collection is probably by the same hand, and shows the same detailing. And I would encourage everyone to go and look at the paintings up close, because the point of the miniatures is that you can't really tell, even from these expanded images, how much is going on there. What confuses me a little bit about this painting is that I'm still not sure if the lady that the gentleman is chatting to is a lady or a man. And Goswami also has to admit that an awful lot of the ladies created by this painter look a little male. Of course, later on you do see rulers in the Mandi hills with men dressed up as women in the paintings, which is really quite an unusual thing to commission an artist to paint for you. So the Mandi court was certainly quite a a wacky court for a moment in time, not just by the fact that they actually painted those scenes and for the patrons.
Thank you, Sarang. Thank you, Robin. And thank you all for coming here today. Thank you.